What's up, boys and girls? Londrick here, and it's time for another Q&A session now. This has been like a monthly thing for a few months now. This time it's 1980s pro wrestling, so this pretty much covers the decade of the 1980s, and it could be about anything and everything involved in that decade. So yeah, I'm just gonna, no need for an introduction really, just gonna get right to it. So let's get to the questions. First set of questions coming from Crazy Cobra 1. That's crazy with a K, by the way. But then number 1. Do you think Magnum TA would have jumped to the WWF if the car accident never happened? Yeah, probably. I mean, obviously the guy was... Yeah, he had a lot of the tools that Vince wanted. He's big guy, charismatic, looked great, had a good gimmick, pretty good worker, so... I think it's obvious at some point Vince would have took him from the NWA. Now would he have jumped in the 1980s? I don't know, but he definitely would have ended up in the WWF eventually at some point if he not had the car accident. And I think he would have done very well in the WWF as well. So I definitely think Magnum TA would have jumped. Then how good do you think Nikita Koloff versus Hulk Hogan would have been at WrestleMania 2 if Vince was able to sign Nikita Koloff? So yeah. So the big rumour is, it's been going around all these years in the IWC, is Vince tried to sign Nikita Koloff in 1986 to put him with Hulk Hogan as the main event of WrestleMania 2 instead of King Kong Bundy. So how good? I think it would have been pretty decent. Would have been better than the Bundy match, for certain. I'm pretty confident about that, but I don't think it would have been anything other than just good. I was bound for 3 stars or something like that, but not like a 3.5, 4-star match or anything like that. But I definitely think it would have been a solid big man match. I mean, Nikita Koloff was decent enough in the ring. I mean, he wasn't exactly great or anything, but he was decent enough, and then Hulk Hogan could work a good match, like for his style and all that. So I think we would have had a good match. At least a good match. There we go. If Bret was IC or WWF champion in the 80s, how successful would his reign be? I have to be honest, and I love Bret Hart, obviously, my favourite wrestler of all time and all that, but Bret wasn't ready in the 80s to have a big singles run. Probably would have flopped, to be honest with you. I mean, don't think Bret was really ready for that opportunity until the early 1990s when he got it. So especially WWF champion, it would have been, he definitely wasn't good enough to be the WWF champion at that time. I mean, you're thinking be the WWF champion over Hogan, over Savage, you know what I mean? So those guys are far more suited to be the world champion than Bret was in the 80s. And even Intercontinental champion, I think, even that was beyond him back then, I think. I mean, Bret really wasn't a good promo back then, to be honest with you. He didn't really have the character. Obviously, the 80s was all about the big bodybuilder physiques as well, and he didn't really have that. So, have to be honest, I don't think Bret would have been successful as a singles guy. I think tagging with Neidhart in the tag division, tag team champions, was a good spot for him back then, and then while he was developing, and then I think he was really ready when he got the big push when he did. So, yeah. Then we got Stephen Taylor next. We got, what was the second biggest dream match in the 80s in brackets, Hogan, Flair, the obvious. So, yeah, you're right there. So, obviously, Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan was the dream match. Everybody knows that. So, the second one, you probably Flair and Savage, I would say. I mean, you're thinking back to, like, 88 when Flair was the NWA champion and Savage was the World Wrestling Federation champion. And what some people might not know is this was originally planned to happen as a main event at SummerSlam 1988. Vince had offered Flair the chance to go to WWF at 88 and face Savage for the title in the main event of SummerSlam 88. But Flair, being loyal to the NWA, turned it down. So I think that match would have been absolutely amazing as well, to be honest. I think they had an awesome match when they first had a match at WrestleMania 8 in 1992, but Both guys were in the early 40s back then, and slightly past the way they were past the peak anyway. They were still kind of in the prime. They still had a lot to offer, but this match happened when both guys were at the absolute peak in 1988. Would have been one of the greatest matches of all time, and probably 5 stars as well. So on the same tone, second biggest tag team dream match of the 80s in brackets, Road Warriors versus Demolition being the obvious. So yeah, you agree with that as well, Road Warriors and Demolition. The Axis Smash version of Demolition anyway. We're doing the obvious tag team dream match of the 1980s, so second biggest, oh, this would be kind of cool, I think. The obviously the Road Warriors, so in like maybe, 1988, the Road Warriors versus, because they weren't strictly a tag team, but I want to count them anyway, so probably the Road Warriors versus the Mega Powers in 1988, that's Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage. That would have been fucking awesome, I think. I mean, the most popular tag team in the world at the time, and yeah, I'd probably say the Road Warriors were more popular than Demolition overall, and then facing the two most popular wrestlers in the world at the time, Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage. That would have been awesome for the fans, I think. Dream babyface versus babyface team match for the fans. Or they could have went the other way and turned the Road Warriors monster heels for the Hulkster and the Macho Man, the Mania and the Madness to conquer. So yeah, I'd probably say Road Warriors versus the Mega Powers for that one. Then what have we got here? What if the Road Warriors came to the WWF in the 80s, and which year would have been the best? I mean, I imagine if the Road Warriors came and there'd be no Demolition. I can guarantee you that. I mean, if Vince had gotten the real Road Warriors early, he probably wouldn't have felt the need to make his own sort of I mean, Demolition, I don't consider Demolition and Road Warriors rip-offs, but can't deny the two similarities between the gimmicks and all that, so and obviously, I think, put the Road Warriors in the hands of Vince McMahon back then, and they're even bigger in my opinion. I mean, obviously the Road Warriors, for me, the greatest, most famous tag team of all time, but if they spent... Oh, shut up. If they were with the WWF back then, then I think they would have been just really, really bigger stars. So, and best year, probably 86, maybe. If they came in 86 and they could have had a great feud of the British Bulldogs, Hart Foundation, so then obviously they could have done something really big at WrestleMania 3. That would have been having the Road Warriors and having the Road Warriors and the Hart Foundation for the tag team titles on that show could have made WrestleMania 3 even bigger. So yeah, probably go for the 1986 maybe. And sorry about that. If David Von Erich never died, I think it would have been signed to WWF or Jim Crockett Promotion / WCW. Yeah, I mean, died in 1984, age of 25. World class, obviously, like later in that decade, went down the pan, and they ended up getting sold to Jerry Jarrett in 1988. But do I think he would have got signed to WWF? Possibly not, because obviously, even back then, the WWF was all about the bodybuilder look and looking like a star and all that. And David Von Erich was he was a tall guy, but he was like very skinny and clearly wasn't using steroids or out. So didn't really have the body. Wasn't a very good looking guy. With all due respect, of course, wasn't really a very good looking guy, but I think it would have been a great fit for Crockett Promotions / WCW in the mid 80s. He would have came in there. I think he definitely would have got signed there. He'd have been the NWA, because he was going to be the NWA champion at some point. So you're thinking he would have had a long rivalry with Ric Flair, and then that would have went to NWA / early WCW. And you got to remember this: David Von Erich was 25 when he died. 25 years old in 1984. So say he didn't die and all that and everything went well, David Von Erich could have been like WCW for years and years. He could have been been in there well in the 1980s. I mean, could have been one of those guys that were still around in the Monday Night Wars era. I mean, by 1995, 1996, he would have still been 36, 37 years old, so 38, whatever he would have been, so he could have been around for quite a long time. I mean, so yeah, I think he would have got signed at WCW, but not the WWF. And then his last question: could Batista have survived in the 80s in the WWF? Yeah, absolutely. I think Batista definitely could have survived in that era. I mean, he had the WWE look, marketability and all that stuff, great power moves and all that. So yeah, I think it would have been a great fit. I mean, maybe he could have went evil. He could have been either number 2 babyface behind Hogan instead of Warrior, maybe. Or he could have been the guy that feuded with Hogan and Warrior. I mean, you think he would have made a perfect Hulk Hogan opponent back then, wouldn't you? I mean, obviously he would have to do the job to the Hulkster and all that, brother, but still. And obviously he would have probably would have came in for like Bobby Heenan or Jimmy Hart or a manager like that. Yeah, I imagine he would have like worked his way up the ranks. Ended up being having that run with Hogan on top and all that stuff. So yeah, I think Batista would have definitely survived in that era. Then we got WAPW. Now we got how different would the WWE and pro wrestling industry be if WrestleMania fell? This is one of the big what ifs, isn't it? I mean, it would have been massively different. I mean, absolutely tremendously different, I think. I mean, it's pretty much accepted as fact, really, that if WrestleMania 1 failed, Vince McMahon would have been out of business. I mean, Vince has pretty much said that himself. That he bet the house, he bet everything on that WrestleMania. Gambled his entire future on that show, it being a success. The house, the cars, the company, maybe even gambled Shane and Stephanie, I don't know, but basically, yeah, if WrestleMania failed, Vince McMahon would have went out of business for sure. It would have been a financial disaster, and would have got stopped right in the middle of, right at the start of the expansion. Wouldn't have gone down well, and then we got then the wrestling business today would have been, may never have got to the heights it did. I mean, the national expansion may not have, well, it probably wouldn't have happened in my opinion, to be honest with you. Wrestling wouldn't be as big as it is. We wouldn't all be talking about wrestling much on the internet, I don't think. I mean, well, you got to look at all the people that were around that time. No one, none of the other promoters at the time really had Vince's vision. Never really had Vince's business acumen, Vince's balls, so I'm sure other guys would have tried to do an expansion, but not only any of them would have been able to pull it off as well as Vince. I mean, Crockett Promotion had the talent, but it seemed like Crockett wasn't the best businessman to go through with it. Fritz von Erich had the horrible stuff with all of his sons dying and Gino Hernandez dying and all the tragedies and all that. Vern Gagne in the AWA was an out-of-touch old fossil, which ironic now, really. Vince is kind of that now, but Vern Gagne was too out of touch and all that, so yeah, I think it was really down to Vince, really. So yeah, wrestling would probably be still very small right now. Would never have blown up like it did, and would never had the big popularity surge of the 1980s. Monday Night Wars probably wouldn't have happened because nobody would have cared enough about wrestling to have a big war and all that. And yeah, it'd be completely different industry now, I think. There we go. How different would Sting and Ultimate Warrior's career have been if Sting went to WWE, Warrior went to Crockett Promotion? That's another great one if. So like, yeah, obviously Warrior and Sting split up in like after Mid-South, and then eventually Sting found his way to the NWA, Crockett Promotions. Warrior went to the WWF, and both blew up in the late 80s, and by 1990 they were both the world champion. Warrior the WWF champion, Sting the NWA champion. Now the question is, how would each guy fare in the other role? Now Sting, I think, would have been just as successful as a Warrior in that role, if not more successful in my opinion. I mean, So yeah, obviously Sting had everything Vince McMahon wanted in a wrestler at the time, but I feel like instead of Warrior, Sting was a far better and far more marketable person. So far more better than the Ultimate Warrior, much better athlete. Seemed like he had more longevity in him and all that. So probably better. About level on charisma, I would say. Arguably, the Warrior had slightly more charisma than Sting, but Sting was a much better worker and all that. So just imagine Sting back then, marketed by Vince McMahon. I think it would have been even bigger than. I always think how cool would it be if it was WrestleMania 6 was actually Sting versus Hogan and not the Warrior. That could have been so much cooler. And then, but then I think like the Warrior would fare slightly less. It was fare pretty much less in the NWA Crocker promotion, because that was more of a wrestling promotion than Vince. I mean, the dude ref with Vince's wrestling ability didn't really matter that much really, as long as you had the right gimmick or the right look or something. But over the NWA, I felt like that was more like the wrestling territory. I mean, sure you had guys like Lex Luger and all that, and Nikita Koloff, but I feel like they were, even like Lex Luger for example, I think he was a much better athlete and a much better worker than the Warrior was back then. So I can't really see the Warrior getting over big in the NWA. Honestly, I think he would have like stuck around for like 6 months to a year, then just disappeared, and we never heard from him again really, because I just don't think it would have been a great fit for that promotion. But unlike Sting, who could actually wrestle and work a bit, Warrior didn't really have that. He relied on his look and his gimmick, which was fine in WWF, where the wrestling didn't really matter back then too much. But in the NWA, I think it would have struggled a lot more. Biggest missed opportunities from the decade of any promotion. So I'll go through like maybe one or two each promotion. So AWA, I think the big one, and then it's obviously not pulling the trigger on Hulk Hogan and putting the AWA title on him. I mean, they pissed about too long with Hogan. Him and Bockwinkel like wrestled for about a year straight or something like that, I think it was. Yeah, like a year or something like that. Then obviously like they kept coming with ways for Hogan not to win the title, and then eventually they let Hogan slip through the fingers. Hogan went to Vince, won the title from the Iron Sheik, and the rest is history. I mean, then obviously then for Vince, I would say for WWF probably not getting Ric Flair in about the time they brought in Arn and Tully in 1988. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was cool when Flair eventually got there in 1991, but just imagine how big Ric Flair in the 80s in the WWF would have been. You could have had Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan, you could have had a WWF version of the Four Horsemen. That would have been absolutely fucking amazing. I mean, you could have had him as a manager, Flair, Arn and Tully, and taking a Mr. Perfect or somebody like that to be the Fourth Horseman. Mr. Perfect, Rick Rude, something like that, and yeah. That would have been utterly amazing, to my opinion. But yeah, so those are probably the standout ones that I can think of right now. Then we got Force and WrestleMania 2 taking place in 3 different arenas. Kind of got what they were going for, but I don't think it really worked. I mean, this was a take on what the NWA did the year before. They actually did this first. Well, kind of. Starrcade 1985 went from 2 locations, the Omni in Atlanta and then in Greensboro, North Carolina. So Vince had to take that idea and try and make it bigger. Vince was going to go in 3 different locations in 3 different time zones on the same pay-per-view. So he went to Los Angeles. I think Los Angeles was last, I think. He went to New York and then Chicago. So yeah, I get what he went for, but I just don't think it really worked that well. It didn't come across well on TV and on pay-per-view, I don't think. But yeah, like I say, I think it was a decent idea in theory. And it wasn't terrible, but don't think it was as good as it could have been, to be honest with you. Something about it just didn't feel right to me and just didn't really work, in my opinion anyway. Then we got our last one, Thoughts on the Survivor Series Starrcade 1987 pay-per-view controversy. So, for the benefit of those who don't know, because I'm guessing not everybody knows what happened here, so this is a brief rundown of what happened. So, Vince was the big dog in town at that time. He'd put most of the territories out of business, or some that were still around were barely surviving. But there was one promotion that was still doing pretty well for itself and pretty much thriving, but in close to competition to Vince, and that was Jim Crockett Promotions, promoting the NWA banner. He'd had the Starrcade and all that. And obviously, like, Vince had had a couple of years worth of pay-per-views now behind him, so Vince was established as the king of wrestling on pay-per-views at that time. So Crockett decided this year Starrcade was going to go on pay-per-view. I mean, up until that point, the first few Starrcades weren't actually pay-per-views, but they were the old closed-circuit TV things. I mean, obviously this isn't. I don't think this isn't really a thing now, but no. So now Crockett was going to take Starrcade on pay-per-view in 1987. Thanksgiving night, the Starrcade had been on Thanksgiving night since the first one in 83. So, all cool, right? Well, Vince being Vince, decided he was going to fuck with Crockett and sabotage the pay-per-view by making his own pay-per-view on the very same night called the new concept Survivor Series, Teams of 5, Strive to Survive. Remember that tagline? So, yeah. Vince was going to create Starrcade to go opposite he was going to create Survivor Series to go opposite Starrcade. And the pay-per-view for companies are thinking, great. Fans will buy the Crockett promotion in the afternoon and watch Vince's on the night. So the rest of the fans are going to buy both pay-per-views, and then the pay-per-view companies are going to make a shitload of money. That's not what happened. Vince went to so in a even bigger attempt to sabotage the pay-per-view, Vince went to the cable companies, threatened them, saying, if you air Starrcade on the same, if you air Starrcade as well as Survivor Series, you won't get WrestleMania. So Vince threatened any cable company that carries Starrcade that you wouldn't get WrestleMania next year. And obviously, the previous WrestleMania 3 was a phenomenal success. Vince had proved himself as a phenomenal successful pay-per-view. Crockett hadn't, so what would you do if you were the cable companies and you were given that kind of ultimatum? I'm pretty sure inclined that you would probably go with Vince and kick Crockett to the curb, wouldn't you? Well, that's what I think. That's what I would do, probably. So, yeah, only two companies carried Starrcade, and obviously Starrcade got a shitty buy rate as a result, lost a shit ton of money, and that really fucked Crockett up badly. I mean, dick move, yeah. Ruthless move, yeah, absolutely it was, and yeah, it probably was a shitty move on Vince's part, but obviously wrestling's a dog-eat-dog world type business, cutthroat business, so do I blame Vince for doing that? Not really. I mean, Vince was doing what he thought was best for his business. But the only problem I really have with this really is like, all these years later, Vince tries to like spin it off that he didn't do anything to sabotage the other companies and put them out of business. But you obviously did though, Vince, didn't you? You obviously did steal the television time slots. You did steal the talent. You did sabotage his pay-per-view, so I just wish Vince was more honest about what he did and all that over the years. And kind of ironic, like 10 years later in the Monday Night Wars, when WCW was doing a lot of the same things to Vince, like taking talent, going head to head with him. Vince cried foul play back then. So I just feel like Vince, the only thing I really criticise Vince for in this situation is being a hypocrite. Like when the same sort of thing happened to him in the 1990s, cry foul play, but obviously just be honest about it, Vince. Just admit you fucked them up. I mean, I understand why he did it. I think it was a dick move, and I think a ruthless move, but Vince is a businessman and did what he thought was best for his own business, so yeah. There we go. Diesel 101 Raw. if Ric Flair came to WWE like planned, because Hogan versus Flair, being bigger than Hogan, Andre, then in brackets, starting off with Savage versus Flair, SummerSlam, Flair winning, 4 Horsemen versus Mega Power Series and having the matches of Survivor Series. Then the blow for WrestleMania 5. I don't know. I mean, obviously Flair and Hogan would have been absolutely humongous at the time if it happened. Obviously, I think WrestleMania 5 would have gone absolute mega buy rate, like even bigger than it already was. Bigger than it already was, so. But could it have been bigger match than Hogan Andre? I find it hard to believe. I mean, yeah, Ric Flair was a star, but Andre the Giant was, before 1987, was probably a bigger star to the casual people than Ric Flair was. I mean, I think more casual, like, TV viewers and general public knew who Andre the Giant was more than knew who Ric Flair was. So it would have been absolutely huge. Probably bigger than Hogan and Savage, I would say, but I have a hard time believing they could have did what Hogan and Andre did. Like, draw 10% buy rate for WrestleMania 3. Draw 93,000 to the Pontiac Silverdome based on their match. Not like nowadays where WWE drew WrestleMania 32 on the WrestleMania brand and then drew a TV rating of 33 million viewers for Saturday night main event. So I don't think I could see that happening. Then we got him. How big of a missed opportunity was the NWA not doing the Freebirds when the Freebirds was the Horsemen the other chance? I mean, did they really have the chance to do Horsemen versus Freebirds? I mean, the Freebirds didn't really come into the promotion until 1989 when Tully and Arn were already gone. You only really had Flair and Barry Windham left. Then obviously maybe 1990 when it was like the different versions of 4 Horsemen. So it wasn't like the original Horsemen and then Michael Hayes, Terry Gordy and Buddy Ross were in the NWA at the same time. So I'm not really sure really. Then we got if Dave Von Erich never died and beat Flair for the NWA title like planned, do you think it would have been a Von Erich versus 4 Horsemen feud down the line? And if that happened, how awesome would that would? Oh, I mean, fucking awesome. Yeah, I think it would happen down the line. I mean, David died, they would have worked together, and all the other Von Erich boys would have came in, had a great feud with the Horsemen in, say, 86, 87, whenever that was. So, yeah, imagine that though, like 8-man tag war games, maybe. I mean, you had some great combinations. You could have had Flair and Kerry, Flair and Kevin. Yeah, Kevin and David versus Arn and Tully. I mean, Mike kind of sucked, granted, but I feel like those guys like Arn, Tully, Flair, Windham would have been able to carry him to a solid match. Maybe if they did 87, then we could have had a great power versus power match between Lex Luger and Kerry Von Erich. So yeah. So I say they could have had David and Flair being the main feud, Kerry and Luger being the minor feud, and then maybe Kevin and Mike facing Arn and Tully for the tag belts. Oh, and then obviously maybe one of the earliest war games could have been the Von Erich boys instead of Dusty and the Road Warriors and all those guys. So I think it would have been some great wrestling anyway. There we go. Should the British Bulldogs win the NWA at least once? Yeah, I think so. I mean, Bulldogs didn't leave till 88 and then... So if they left in 88, they could have went to like WCW then, or even before, I think. Missed out on some great matches by not seeing the British Bulldogs in the NWA. I mean, could have had Bulldogs versus Tully and Arn. Bulldogs and the Road Warriors, I think, would have been badass in the late 80s, and that would have been truly awesome feud. I think Bulldogs would have brought the best out of the Road Warriors as well, I think. Bulldogs versus Midnight Express, like either Eaton or Condry, or especially Eaton and Lane, I think. Because I think Stan Lane and Bobby Eaton Midnight Express was the best Midnight Express in my opinion. So I think that'll be fucking awesome, to be honest with you. Thoughts on the business from 80 to 83. Unfortunately, not a lot out there really, so I haven't seen a ton of stuff from that time. I've seen bits and pieces of it, but wasn't. I don't think wrestling was. My favourite era of the 80s was definitely 85 to 89. I think it had some good points for sure. I think World Class was really good around this time with the Freebirds Von Erich rivalry. Great young guys. Obviously, in Crockett, the early Starrcades were excellent with Ric Flair, Harley Race, Roddy Piper, Valentine, Steamboat and Youngblood versus the Briscoes. So, but the WWF was kind of decent. I mean, that was the era of the really long Bob Backlund title reign. But you had talent like Sergeant Slaughter still there doing well, Pat Patterson, Superfly Jimmy Snuka, Don Morocco. So it was good and it was fine, but I think wrestling became much better once it exploded in 1985 overall. But admittedly, I haven't seen a great amount of stuff because even I wasn't born then, so yes, even I'm not old enough to remember to live through all this stuff. So yeah, I thought the business was good, but I think it really got better 85 onwards. Yeah, we got Bruno 666 Teddy. Just one question. Do you think wrestling in the 80s did a better job of hyping up characters so the matches were interesting, no matter how basic they were, they could be from a Oh, absolutely. I mean, wrestling booking was so much simpler back then. You didn't have annoying little smarks on the internet complaining about everything. You didn't have You didn't have 12 pay-per-views a year back then. You didn't have 5 hours of television. So you're able to book good characters. I mean, Ultimate Warrior is a perfect example of booking and hyping up the characters so that the matches, even though you knew probably the Warrior matches were going to suck, they were still interesting because they were being hyped up so well. Yeah, so even like Hogan versus the Monster would be very interesting back then. Even though most of the matches invariably sucked, they booked them so well and booked the Monster so well that you're looking forward to seeing it. I mean, imagine now if they try to do Roman Reigns versus Braun Strowman. You get all the people going, "Oh my god, this sucks, they can't wrestle, they've only got 2 moves. Braun Strowman's horrible, this match is going to be terrible, there's going to be no wrestling in it whatsoever." Well, you didn't get those type of people back then, so it was a lot easier and they did a lot better job of hyping the characters, definitely. Then we got Owen Peterson. Would you consider Starrcade 1983 one of, if not the bloodiest events in the history of wrestling? Oh, definitely. I mean, I think there was blood in at least 3 matches. I think it was Manny Fernandez and Abdullah the Butcher there bled in their match. There was probably blood and more because I can't remember all the event off by heart, but then obviously Piper and Valentine, that was just a fucking bloodbath. That epic dog collar match, that was just full of blood. And then main event, Ric Flair Harley Race, full of blood as well. I mean, there was probably other matches where there was blood bleeding, but those are the 3 ones that stand out. I mean, I always remember before the main event, I think even before Piper and Valentine, that blood stain on the mat and all that. So yeah, back then NWO was more gritty and stuff like that, so you got more blood back then. It wasn't really till wrestling got more mainstream and like corporate, they cut down on their bleeding, which I don't mind it not bleeding now, but whatever. And then we got considering how well documented that was at Dynamite and Davey Boy Smith had problems with each other, how well do you think if you between the Bulldogs would have worked out in the WF in 1989? Oh, that would have been great. I mean, that could have been a great angle, a great heel turn. I imagine Dynamite would have been the one to turn if I had to guess if they did that, but I think it would have been interesting and drew money and stuff like that. I think Davey Boy and Dynamite would have made a fine addition to the WrestleMania 5 card, I think. That would have been a really nice undercard match at WrestleMania 5. They did actually do a breakup angle in 89, but it was in Stampede Wrestling, and then Stu's business was dying at the time and it didn't really draw much money, to be honest with you. So if they did in the WF though, I think they would have promoted the hell out of it. They might have each got a manager to help with the promos because Bulldogs were Dynamite in particular was pretty horrible on the microphone, so might have needed a manager to help hype it up, but it would have been pretty good, I think. I mean, if you ever watched any 80s Stampede wrestling, and would you consider their matches at the same level or better than the mainstream wrestling matches back then? Now this is a good subject. I mean, Stampede wrestling, I mean, I have seen some stuff But, this is a big but, they didn't film all the matches. They used to cut like half the matches out on television because psychology back then was TV was used as a vehicle to promote the house show business, which is how wrestling ran on back then. I mean, this was before the Monday Night Wars and all that, so they weren't giving away stuff on TV. So I've seen like bits of it, but like for example, Bret Hart and Dynamite Kid, a couple of their matches, but you only get like 10 minutes of a 40 minute match or something like that. You didn't get to see the full matches back then, which is a shame. I mean, and honestly, I really wanted. I wish I could have seen these matches in full because read about them in Bret's book over the years. Some of them sound amazing, like the Bret Dynamite matches from late 70s, early 80s. I would have absolutely loved to have seen those matches in full. Bret had a match with Dynamite. He had one of the first ladder matches with Dynamite in 81. So, yeah, I really would have liked to have seen more Stampede. I think if it was around today, Stampede would have had a big buzz about it. Like I think it would have been very popular with the internet fans, I think. We had a lot of young guys doing some great technical wrestling. All that means you had Dynamite Kid when he was young. Obviously, I think Dynamite Kid would have been an IWC hero right now. If we were in the now time, Dynamite Kid would have been one of the most loved guys on the IWC. You had a young Bret, you had a young Davey Boy Smith was in there as well, and then in the later version of Stampede, you had young Owen Hart, who I think, like Dynamite, would have been a sensation. Young Chris Benoit, young Brian Pillman. So yeah, pretty much. Then we got what are we going? Even though they weren't exactly killing the WF back then, would you consider 1989 perhaps WCW's best year ever before the Monday Night Wars? Oh God, yes. I think WCW 1989 was pretty amazing. I mean, business-wise, that wasn't really reflected because they weren't really doing great business back then, but for show quality, holy fucking crap. So absolutely amazing stuff this year. I mean, first off, 1989 is the year of the amazing Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat trilogy. I mean, you can argue all day long what's the greatest match of all time, what's the greatest feud of all time. But for me, there's absolutely no argument. I mean, and I'll be unreasonable prick about this. The greatest series of matches of all time are those Flair and Steamboat matches from Chi-Town Rumble, Clash of the Champions 6 and Wrestle War 89. Pro wrestling doesn't get any better than that, guys. If you haven't seen those Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat matches, and you've got the network, get click on it, watch them. Trust me, you have to. I think you feel more complete as a wrestling fan if you haven't seen those matches. And then the follow-up of that, I mean, the awesome Ric Flair Terry Funk match. The Ric Flair and Terry Funk match. So Flair arguably had his two greatest feuds that year with Steamboat, and an absolutely awesome feud with Terry Funk. Absolutely fucking amazing feud with Terry Funk. Culminating in another 5-star match at Clash of the Champions 9. That amazing I Quit match they had. Then the other side you had Lex Luger as the United States champion, being absolutely awesome that year. They were continuing to build Sting as a franchise, and obviously he would be the champion in 1990. But Sting was killing it, having tremendous matches with Great Muta. Great Muta was absolutely awesome that year. You still had tremendous tag teams, like the Road Warriors were still there. Midnight Express was still killing it. I mean, Freebirds came in, Dr. Death, Steve Williams. You had young up-and-comers like Brian Pillman coming through, Sid Vicious. Barry Windham was still around. I mean, Great American Bash 89 was absolutely legendary pay-per-view. One of the best pay-per-views of all time. So, yeah, I would definitely say 89 was an unbelievable year for the NWA, really. I mean, in-ring action was absolutely tremendous. Oh, Steiner started that year as well. Rick had been in for a while, but then Scott came at the promotion about mid-1989. So you saw the early stages of the Steiner brothers developing. So yeah, so much to like about NWA 89. Here we go. What are your thoughts on Jesse Ventura calling Tito Santana Chico during his commentary? It was just funny. I don't really have any great thoughts on it, really. I mean, Yeah, it was just a funny nickname he had for him, and it was kind of all tongue in cheek and all that, so it worked. Then we got who we got next? Samoan Fan 101. Aside from Real American, what was your favourite wrestling theme song? Well, I'm assuming you mean from the 80s. Real American is not my favourite, silly. Obviously, your favourite theme song has to be the Demolition's theme. That was a classic theme, wasn't it? Greatest WWE themes of all time. Ironically, also performed by Rick Derringer. Surprised, I think, really. Well, yeah, it's got to be Demolition. That's my favourite over Real American. I mean, I'm English, so I don't really care about Real American songs too much, but still. So, got to be Demolition, really, hasn't it? Then we got, looking back, what is the most racially insensitive wrestler character from the 1980s? Except Slick. I mean, also, yeah, probably Slick's one, but you got to say Virgil, haven't you? I mean, think about this. Virgil was a black man being portrayed as a manservant to, pretty much a manservant to a rich white man. I mean, really? I mean, now bear in mind, people, like years and years ago, black people were once slaves to white people, particularly white rich men. So, when you see a black man acting as a manservant to a rich white man, there's a bit of a problem there. That's not the best idea, to be honest. Doesn't really, yeah. You can pretty much see how, I mean, anyone with a brain can see how that could be potentially a problem, couldn't it, really? Yeah. Yeah. And I suppose, yeah, so it's got to be that one, really. Then. Why wasn't there many international talent back in the 80s? WWF croc promotions like they are now in major companies like Nakamura, Balor and Tommy. Steamboat doesn't count because he was born in New York. I think the reason was, like, just the talent pool was so hot in America at the time. I mean, talent pool was so deep they didn't really need to go internationally to get started. I mean, the only one I can really think of was like 1989 with Great Muta in the NWA, but apart from that, people who'd made the name in Japan didn't really get booked in the States, really. So, and I think the main reason WWE turned to guys like Nakamura, like a Hideo Itami, like a Finn Balor, like an Asuka now, is because talent pool's pretty thin in America, and they need, like, obviously with no big competition or anything, they need to look more internationally for talent now, whereas back then they didn't really need to do that because they had all the good talent they needed right there in America, which obviously it was easier to get an American in, like, all that, easier to get him to know the style and all that, so didn't really need to be going to Japan and bringing all Japan talent in, bringing New Japan talent in, bringing Mexican talent in. So I think that's pretty much the reason they didn't need them at the time, where it's nowadays, like with no competition and all that, and with a relatively thin talent pool in the United States, WWE needs to go more international. They need to go find a Shinsuke Nakamura, need to find a Hideo Itami, need to look and bring in a Finn Balor. So, whereas back then they didn't really need to do that. And then we go, how successful do you think Brock Lesnar would have been in the wrestle, if you wrestle in the 80s? Give your opinion on him being in WWF and WCW/Crockett Promotions. Oh, I think Brock would have been very successful in either promotion, because he's Brock fucking Lesnar. I think Brock Lesnar would be successful in any era, in my opinion. He was just that kind of once in a lifetime special talent for me. Now, as far as the ref goes, he could have been successful, but you could definitely tell he would have been one of the guys that came in, got a monster push, destroyed all the baby faces, and then got vanquished by Hulk Hogan, wouldn't you? So, or if they had him babyface, he could have been pretty much a more successful version of the Ultimate Warrior. But in Crockett Promotions, I think he could have been like the total package in Crockett. I mean, really world-class athlete, looked like a superstar and all that. Imagine Brock Lesnar and Ric Flair back then. Holy fucking shit, the bed. That would have been something unreal, I think. So he would have been like Lex Luger, but much, much better. I mean, obviously Brock Lesnar's a much, much better athlete and much, much better worker than Lex Luger was. So I think Brock Lesnar would have been tremendously successful in the 80s if he was booked right. I mean, yeah, if he was booked right, I mean, you could see him being a sensation in NWA. He would have been successful in WWF, but obviously probably would have got vanquished by Hulk Hogan. Then we got that man that was the Daniel. What match do you consider the more important out of two that happened on the same night? Randy Savage, Ted DiBiase, WrestleMania 4. I was thinking Ric Flair, Clash of Champions. Now, I think Savage and DiBiase was a bigger match, but more important match, I feel like it was Flair and Sting. I feel like that match made Sting into a superstar. It was an absolute launch pad. I mean, Savage and DiBiase was big, but I feel like if it wasn't for that match that Sting and Flair had at the Clash of the Champions, Sting might never have been the superstar that he ended up becoming, really. I mean, I do believe that. So I feel like that match was tremendously successful. So I'd probably go with that. Or what would happen if Magnum TA not got injured and the plan goes on to win the NWA title of Starrcade in 1986? So yeah, that's correct. Magnum pretty much was supposed to win the NWA title of Starrcade in 1986 against Ric Flair, but had the car accident and then the big spinal injury and ended up in a wheelchair. He's been in the wheelchair for the rest of his life. Just sad, really. And that would have happened if Magnum. I think Magnum would have been a phenomenal success. I mean, the guy was like 20. I think he's still in his 20s when this happened as well. So obviously he would have been like probably the new face of the Crockett Promotions. I mean, Ric Flair still would have been huge, yes, but I feel like Flair would have took a back seat to Magnum would have been like the way forward. Flair probably would have been still around in a big spot, but Magnum would have been the guy. I mean, he's big guy, had a good look, lots of charisma, pretty good wrestler, total package, really. I mean, this is one of the big things I think that came out of this. This is very interesting, and I think this is very true. If Magnum hadn't got injured, would that spot for top babyface have come available for Sting? Like honestly, one of the big things Sting got big because the NWA were looking for a top babyface. With Magnum around, would they have pushed Sting as hard as he did? I don't think they would have done. I think they wouldn't have needed to. I mean, they would have had Magnum for that position. I mean, I think Magnum's around the same age as Sting, so they were looking at Magnum as a long-term superstar. Would have been a star for WCW well in the 1980s. And like I say, Sting big push might never have came. And then obviously if that didn't happen, wrestling could have been completely different. I mean, imagine a world where Sting wasn't WCW's franchise. I mean, if Magnum TA had won the title like planned, that whole Sting being the franchise thing may never have happened. And then we got a better feud in 1989, Hogan vs Savage or Flair vs Funk. Two amazing feuds, actually. But I'll probably go Hogan and Savage as the best feud of them all. I thought Hogan and Savage was an amazing rivalry. That feud really built from pretty much all of 1988 into 1989, into WrestleMania 5. Mega powers explode. So much build-up and tremendous promos, intense action. It had it all, really. I mean, big business. I mean, WrestleMania 5 drew a monster buy rate, so I think Hogan and Savage was definitely the best one of the two. Now we're getting down to the end now. Well, we've got 3 people left. Got Mania on YT. When do you think we should have plugged the momentum into Lex Luger? I'm not sure. I feel like people think Lex Luger should have won the title back then, and I would probably say they pretty much did good by him. I mean, you had a long feud with Flair, main event at the Starrcade, and then had a great run as US champion. So I don't feel like they should have put the title on Lex Luger back then. I think Sting was a much better choice to push as the guy. I mean, I think Sting had a Sting had a great look with the face paint. Sting was a much better worker than Luger, better talker than Luger, so I think Sting was by far the better option than Lex Luger back then. So yeah, I don't really think they should have put the title on him in the 80s. You know, thoughts on the Rockers in the AWA and the WWF? Well, the Rockers, oh, that's the Midnight Rockers first, were awesome. Two really innovative tag team. I mean, did the high flying style that's so popular nowadays. Rockers were one of the first teams to bring that to the WWF. I mean, what people don't remember is when the Rockers started, Shawn Michaels was just a kid. Shawn Michaels was like 20-year-old kid back then. I think people forget like how young he really was. He really was a young guy, like 20, 21 years old. And Shawn Michaels was awesome even then. Shawn Michaels was awesome from like, by the time he was 20 all the way to his retirement. Thought they were awesome. They were like, for me, they were the Rock and Roll Express, but better. Like, better workers than the Rock and Roll Express, in my opinion. Obviously, Rock and Roll were the bigger team at the time, but I feel like the Midnight Rockers, or the Rockers, were even better than that. I mean, and it shows how fucking big the WF tag division was back then. That these guys never got a run as tag team champions. I mean, obviously they were undersized as well, which probably took Vince a while to warm up to them, but they had amazing match. They had amazing feud with Buddy Rose and Doug Summers in the AWA. Tremendous matches with brain busters in the WWF at that time. Good matches with the Rougeaus. I mean, they had a pretty good match at WrestleMania 5 with Bossman and Akeem. So, and they were really over as well, I think. They were definitely like a popular team with the girls and the kids and that. Yeah, I think they had a few good matches with the Hart Foundation, 89 as well. So, yeah, I was a big fan of the Rockers' work back then. One of the hottest teams in the 1980s, and they really only won tag team champs because that fucking tag division was so fucking massive. With the Hart Foundation, Demolition, the Brainbusters, the Bulldogs, etc. Then we got I don't know what have we got. Which was a better heel turn, Martel and Tito, WrestleMania 5, or Barry Windham on Lex Luger after the clash a few weeks later? Probably Windham on Luger. I mean, let's be honest, Martel and Tito were pretty much mid-card guys. And Luger and Windham were probably semi-main eventers at the time. So I'll probably go with that one. Windham turn on Luger, I think, was a lot better than Martel and Tito Santana. Now, Hunter Walls, we've got two more people left here. Why is WrestleMania 2 aired on a Monday instead of a Sunday? Really, back then, pay-per-view was a fairly new thing. So they didn't have a particular pay-per-view schedule back then. Not like now. It wasn't really until 1995 where they went to the strict every Sunday. Sunday was pay-per-view day type thing. Sometimes you had pay-per-views on a Saturday. I think even some, like, obviously Survivor Series on Thanksgiving night every week, which I think it's a Wednesday or a Thursday, I'm not sure. Even I know some of the early SummerSlams are on a Monday as well, so. And obviously back then there was no live Raw every single week, so they didn't have live Raw on Monday, so sometimes you would just put pay-per-views on there instead. Like I say, pay-per-view was a new thing. They didn't really have a particular pay-per-view schedule down to the ground yet, and that's pretty much why. Who was the best wrestler in the 80s in brackets other than Hogan? Well, it's got to be his opposite number of the NWA or Ric Flair, hasn't it? I mean, if you were a fan of the 80s, if you're a ref fan, you had Hulk Hogan. If you liked the NWA, you had Nature Boy Ric Flair. I mean, Ric Flair in the 80s was as good as a wrestler ever was. I mean, absolutely amazing in the ring. One of the best of all time. Looked like a star. Awesome on the mic. Like one of the best talkers on the microphone as well. Arguably wrestling's greatest total package, Ric Flair. So obviously it's got to be Flair. And then a third would probably be Macho Man Randy Savage. What was the best tag team match? So, I always liked the Rock and Roll versus Arn and Ole Minnesota Wrecking Crew Starrcade 1986. I'm pretty sure it was 86. Yeah, Starrcade 86, I think it was. Steel cage match for the NWA Tag Team titles. That was just an amazing match in my opinion. If you haven't seen that match, you definitely check it out. Then we got, you think the reason WrestleMania 4 was bad was because of the tournament? Well, I don't think WrestleMania 4 was that bad. I mean, granted it wasn't a good in-ring show, but I like the tournament, the way it's booked and all that, but why people might think it's bad, I understand. I mean, wrestling wasn't great. I mean, it probably did have something to do with the tournament. I mean, obviously when you're doing a one-night tournament on the one show, as well as other matches, you cram the whole lot of matches in a 4-hour show, aren't you, really? I think there was something like 15, 16 matches that night, so... And this is, if you want to do that, you've got to make the matches short, haven't you, to fit them all in, so that's probably why. Now, granted, I don't think WrestleMania 4 would have been a significantly better show had they not done the tournament thing. Had they just done a straight-up wrestling card, like... something like that, I think that would have been a lot better, but yeah. Hold on, I'll just be a sec. Sorry about that. Someone rang the house phone, bastards. But right, so yeah, like I said, I don't think WrestleMania 4 was bad, but I understand people who do think it was bad, and tournament probably did have something to do. And then we got what is the best wrestling match in the 1980s? Now, great question, and this is the one I'm confident answering. Not only was this the best match in the 1980s, my humble opinion, the greatest wrestling match of all time that I've seen anyway. And that's Clash of the Champions 6, 2 out of 3 falls, Ric Flair versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. This is pro wrestling. This is what wrestling's all about, people. This match was an absolute epic, for me, the greatest match of all time. The Flair Steamboat trilogy is amazing, but this match stands out. Over 55 minutes of just unbelievable wrestling, great storytelling, great selling, great psychology, great intensity, awesome pace as well. I mean, obviously in these long matches, you tend to get a lot of long spots with like holds and all that, sitting in holes, but that was kept to a minimum here. They really kept up a tremendous fucking pace. I mean, these two were the best in-ring performers in the world at the time, and they were both at the peaks of their careers at the same time. What a match. Clash of the Champions 6 on the network, it's on DVDs, it'll probably be on stuff like Daily Motion and that, so if you're a wrestling fan and you haven't seen this match, check it out and thank me later. Really was amazing stuff. Then the last set of questions, your last but you're not least, and that's Prince of Strong Style V2. Is Steamboat and Misawa wrestled each other for the NWA title in All Japan? No, sorry, I've read that right. Try again. Steamboat and Misawa wrestled in 1989 for the NWA title in All Japan, when Misawa was Tiger Mask 2. Do you think if Misawa had been as good as he was in the 1990s during this time and had a classic with Steamboat? If this was Misawa of the 1990s, pretty sure this would have been a 5-star match. Pretty sure it would have been an absolute classic, but yeah. So this was when Steamboat was the NWA champion. He went to All Japan and wrestled with Misawa back when he was Tiger Mask. Now, I haven't actually seen that match. It's definitely on YouTube. I have seen it on YouTube, but I never actually went up watching the match. But I'm going to assume it's great. I mean, it's Ricky fucking Steamboat in 1989, so of course it's going to be great. But if it was Misawa in the 1990s against Steamboat, I think this would have been epic, truly epic. And then we got have you seen the Tiger Mask Dynamite Kid matches? If so, favourite or best of the bunch? I've seen a few, yeah, and they're absolutely fucking amazing. Now, I can't remember the exact date of the matches, but there's 2 matches that stand out. And at least one of these matches is a 5-star match. Now, one of them's from I think it's like May of 1982 or I can't see the dates are wrong, but so I'll tell you what the outfit's like. One of the matches, Dynamite Kid had a blue singlet on, like long tights and a vest. That was amazing. Then another match, I think it was in 1983, Dynamite had a red tights with a yellow stripe on them. That match was amazing. These matches are so ahead of the time. I mean, these matches look amazing in 2016. In 1982, 1983, these are truly revolutionary matches. I mean, I think these guys were like junior heavyweight style. Before that style came, these guys made that style. I mean, I think it's inspired a new generation to take it even further than 1990s, and then obviously the style of wrestling now, a lot of it goes back to Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid. I mean, pretty sure most of these matches are out there on YouTube and Daily Motion, so if you haven't seen them, you can definitely check them out. But those two, I can't remember the exact dates, but one is in 82 and one is in 83. I mean, could Magnum TA be an equal in popularity? Sorry, try that again. Could Magnum TA have been equal in popularity of Hogan if he hadn't got in the car accident? No, probably not. I mean, would Magnum TA have been popular? Absolutely. Would he have been mega popular? Yeah, absolutely. But saying he's asking if he's going to be at Hogan's level, that's a big ask, to be honest with you. I think you're asking a lot if you want someone to be as popular as Hulk Hogan. I mean, I think Hogan's popularity back then was pretty much untouchable. You couldn't really touch Hogan's popularity back then. Not even Magnum TA would have been popular, but nowhere near on Hogan's scale for absolute sure. Then we got what made Superclass 3 such a mess when it came to not just the Kerry Lawler match. Well, to be fair, I've not actually seen the entire show. I've only really seen the Flair and Lawler Kerry Von Erich match. That was a great match, by the way. But from what I've heard and what I can gather, it was really a mess because, look, this was a combined show. You had AWA, World Class Championship Wrestling in Memphis. So you had Vern Gagne, Fitz Von Erich, Jerry Jarrett, all trying to co-promote an event. Like, obviously, and these guys have their own stars, have their own opinions, have their own way they want to do things. They want to protect their stars. So how the hell are you going to get these guys to work together and bring up a cohesive show? I mean, I think they all try to band together to attack Vince, but I'm sure they couldn't agree on anything, or everyone had Vern had his own agenda, Fritz Von Erich had his own agenda, Jerry Jarrett had his own agenda. They all had massive egos, so when you have that, it's not very much chance you're going to have a very successful wrestling show, is it? I mean, like I said, I haven't seen the entire card, but that would probably be guess why. And then the final question, it's a good one actually. Underrated classics during the 80s, AWA, NWA, WF, WCW, All Japan, New Japan, etc. So underrated classics, so I won't talk about the big matches, but so underrated ones I would say, can't really think of anything from the AWA that's underrated classic because a lot of AWA stuff's not out there. I mean, WWF, there's actually an amazing match between Savage and Steamboat before WrestleMania 3. It's on Savage's new DVD. It's probably online. It's in February of 87 in the Maple Leaf Gardens. This match obviously wasn't because of the WrestleMania 3 match, but this was an amazing match, a great match. I'll probably rate that match 4.5 stars. I would definitely recommend you checking that Savage Steamboat match out if you haven't seen it. And little known match that a lot of people might not have seen at all, but it's from 1984, tag team match. I think it's in the Garden. It's this tag team match for the Briscoe brothers, and that's Jack and Jerry Petel, just not to confuse modern day fans with Mark and Jay Briscoe, taking on Dick Murdoch and Adrian Adonis. This is actually one of the best tag team matches in WWE history. I don't think anyone's seen it before. Obviously people might have seen it, but not many people have seen or heard about it or talk about it. But honestly, just a kick-ass tag team match. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen it. I would absolutely 100% recommend that match. And then what else? So NWA, I think Ricky Steamboat versus Lex Luger from Great American Bash 89. One of the best matches just over 10 minutes you'll ever see. For me, Luger's best match outside of his Flair matches. Steamboat got a tremendous match out of him that night. That match has to be seen in my opinion. And then this match was on NWA television. I can't remember. Might have been the World Championship Wrestling show, might have been worldwide. But it was on the WWE Tag Team DVD brought out 2010 or something. And that's the Russians, Ivan Koloff and Crusher Khrushchev versus Rock and Roll Express. It was almost 30 minutes of a free television match. And it's honestly one of the coolest tag team matches of all time. Can't remember the exact date. It was from 1986. Sure it was. Actually, no. No, I think I'm wrong, actually. I think it's 1985, sorry, but that match is absolutely tremendous. Has to be seen to build. Has to be seen, in my opinion. Tremendous, tremendous match. What else have we got? We go to Mid-South and find a couple of gems there. Ric Flair and Terry Taylor NWA title match from 1985. I found that on the Mid-South DVD they put out about 3 years ago now, something like that. That's just a classic Ric Flair and his Terry Taylor. Then Ted DiBiase, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Steel Cage, Coleman Gloves, Loser Leaves Town match. Absolutely awesome match that one was. Really, really good stuff. And then that's pretty much all I can think of right now. There's probably more, but off the top of my head, that's pretty much what I've come up with. So yeah. So that's a wrap, guys. That's another Q&A done. Thanks for the questions. Don't know, probably come back next month maybe, or the month after that. So I'm out for now, guys, and peace.